All right, guys, and thank you for that, Maddie. I'm going to kind of building on some of the things that Maddie has been talking about seeing pollution data and thinking, why is this happening and what next for my school? I'm going to do a bit of a story time on some work that I've been doing with RBKC, and specifically looking at reflections from work I did with a nursery school in Kensington and Chelsea. And yeah, I think reflection points that we might be able to carry into our settings. So a little bit of background. I'll try and kind of trawl through the shape of the bit of work that I was doing with RBKC quick as possible, because that's not really the focus. But I have been supporting an air quality audit program funded by the Public Health team in RBKC, where schools received Read London sensors for 6 months. Um, so the borough has a kind of hit list of schools, and it gives them a sensor that it puts in for a while, and then a member of the team from Arup, and that's a consultancy, comes into a school, makes some observations about journeys, about the site, about things in the local area, and makes a audit report based on data from the Breathe London sensor and based from these observations, and they make bespoke recommendations. So schools in RBKC have actually been joining the Imperial network, so they have been using the Clarity sensors instead of the early ones. But I think the inflection points are kind of very, very much still relevant to the work we're doing here. Audit recommendations made by Arup, our consultants, are for physical implementations, things like green screens and bike storage, and also for awareness of the kind of soft interventions like signage or pedestrian training. So the idea is that we use our data and that we there's then budget from the council to come in and make something happen to make it better. So the RBKC team supports schools to find contractors to make their interventions come to life. Global Action Plan, and that is us, are responsible for engaging the schools, and largely that means the students and the student body. Most of the schools in this program are primaries, so I do workshops with normally year fives. We work with some secondaries, and that's normally year nine. But the school that I want to talk about today is a children's centre, so it's a nursery. And the people that I met in this nursery were not the very little ones, but I met school staff and I met governors so that we could talk about the findings of their report and what we could do and how we could really bring the school community with us on that journey. So Goldwyn and Maxilla Children's Centre had their sensor installed in July last year, and it was up and monitoring for 6 months. And they're in a really interesting setting. It's a small nursery and children's centre in North Kensington, which faces the Westway, and that's an elevated section of the M4. So somewhere that we might be perhaps quite concerned about pollution levels and quite interested to see the reaction of the traffic pollution with the school, and something we might want to monitor more closely. Fortunately, despite the school's aspect, sensor data suggested pollution levels were comparable with the rest of the borough, so maybe not as high as we might have feared. However, we were still interested in doing further monitoring, and one of the recommendations from this report was to kind of keep that sensor up a bit longer so we could get a better picture of year-round pollution. And in March, I hosted a workshop and I spoke to school staff and to governors to really kind of pick through that audit data and look at the recommendations that their scientific audit had suggested. This is a screen grab from the old Breathe London website, and it kind of just suggests, this is, I think, from the day before I went in, a little snapshot demonstrating really quite low pollution. I know that we're showing particulates here. NOx was also similarly quite low. And we opened up our kind of more granular data with the school staff and could look at these kind of spiky episodes of pollution and kind of get a sense of these kind of quite high exceedances, perhaps for a very focused amount of time. And there might be conclusions that we can make about particular traffic incidents, because I think similar to Jack's school setting, this might be. I don't think many of the kids at all at this nursery were being dropped off at school. This isn't traffic that's created by the school, but this is traffic that the school is living with, that it's experiencing. Um, so these are the recommendations that we had in this specific school's report. And one of them, which I think might be a quite alarming recommendation for a school staff member to receive, was to reduce playground use on high pollution days, which I think feels like perhaps quite an extreme instruction, because we know the importance of getting kids outside to play, and the school has very limited space. So there weren't perhaps there were no options to get kids playing in a playground further away from that big busy road, the M4. Um, uh, we were very interested in longer term monitoring and managing exposure. So looking at how we can react to high pollution episodes, and change maybe some things that we're doing in the school to protect the kids and staff from that pollution. And then there were some more practical suggestions too about buggy and scooter parking, and about telling the school community more about pollution and what they could do. Um, so we are interested in conducting longer term monitoring for this particular site at this particular nursery. And then some of the findings that we might have after that longer monitoring might be about mitigation, might be about, we know that there is high pollution in this nursery on very busy traffic days. What can we do to mitigate that pollution? Can we install things like air purifiers to help keep everyone in the building and around the building breathing nice, clean, healthy air? Managing exposure with forecasting tools. So some of the audits on this program suggested physical interventions like green screening or like bike parking to reduce or mitigate the amount of pollution that a school was exposed to. But because there was really minimal outdoor space in this context, this Goulburn and Maxilla nursery, we didn't have space for a green screen, basically. So the kind of normal recommendations that we might have looked at weren't suitable for this context, and that's why the specialists at Arup suggested managing playground use. And we discussed what that meant with the school, and I think the staff were quite understandably worried about how are they going to keep their kids inside on something like a very hot day, which is when a lot of our high pollution episodes might be. How are you going to operationalize that, and how are you going to look after everyone's safety and well-being and make sure that everyone's getting the most out their school day and having a good learning environment if you've got to keep everyone inside? So I think there was some immediate concerns from the team that we spoke to. So we discussed that nursery school, and I think many schools have screens at reception area for visitors where they can display information about upcoming events, that kind of thing. And we discussed whether it was appropriate to share Breathe London data or data from our sensor on a screen like that, so that visitors to the school or parents could see what the pollution was like. And the staff that we spoke to decided that maybe this wasn't the most appropriate thing, because they didn't want parents bringing their little ones to this nursery to take matters into their own hands, to decide that actually I'm not going to bring my kid to school this day and I'm going to keep my kid at home. We decided that's probably not best for the welfare or the air pollution exposure of the kids. So how do we share pollution information with the school community and with the school team, so that they can take action without alarming anyone in this preschool setting? So we discussed AirText, and AirText is a free service that anyone can get in London. If you're interested in signing up, I can share information on how to in the chat. And AirText gives us 3-day forecast for air pollution, and it also does things like pollen and UV and temperature. So it allows us to plan for pollution events. So if there's something like big high pressure weather system, like a very hot summer's day when the air is quite stagnant and not moving anywhere, it allows us to prepare and respond to those pollution events. So this was one of the measures that we discussed because the school might not have their Breathe London sensor forever and ever. But in the time they do, they can log onto the website and look at what the pollution is doing hour by hour like that as well. So Goulburn and Maxilla really represents a kind of more extreme context. It's a school with exposure to a very busy road that can take minimal steps to kind of mitigate their exposure to the pollution from that road. But I think there might be learnings along the lines of making connections as to why high pollution events are happening when they're happening and what we do next. So we were really interested in discussing kind of what a effective and sensitive way of communicating information about pollution and about high pollution events with parents might be, and what an effective way of communicating that information to staff might be. I must say the team that we're working with in Goulburn Maxilla are really well versed in air quality. Actually, they've done some great work, and one of the governors is a head at a local primary who's also done a handful of air pollution projects with the council in that setting too. So they really did know the topic very well. But I understand that not everyone that we might be communicating with might have the same background in air quality. So what's a useful level of information? What's a useful background level to furnish people with so that they can feel informed and feel empowered to make decisions for themselves? We discussed with the nursery school creating a high pollution episode procedure. So when the kind of data point on their Breathe London sensor might cross into that yellow and orange zone with higher exposures, what happens? What do they do? How do they respond? And how do they respond in a proportionate manner that kind of still looks after their the well-being and the normal school days of both the students and the staff. So I think that there are some maybe reflections, and we've got space in this project and in our project team to create resources and put these on that Breathe London website that we've just showed you to help people to make those informed choices. But I think it was a really useful conversation to have with this school about some of the concerns they might have about handling this kind of communication of pollution information in a sensitive way that doesn't alarm communities and alarm parents, and allows them to continue to effectively run the school day. So a bit of an inflection point maybe, and maybe Jack or Helen, any ideas perhaps about things that we can do to, I know perhaps a high pollution like episode procedure sounds quite intense and quite extreme, and that's probably something that's not applicable to all school settings. But yeah, if there are, I don't have the chat open, and I'm just going to open it now. Oh, thank you, Chris, at School Super Zones. RBKC, I think, also doing work with School Super Zones as well. Fantastic. Yes, open to the floor. That's kind of my reflections and my story. It's the story time from some work that I've been doing with pollution sensors in schools in Kensington.